We start with the Boston Bruins. Nick, lead us with the Boston Bruins. Don't say a word.
I told you to mute his mic. You don't want to listen. To him.
I don't know if he's drinking on pod or
just
what's going on exactly, but
just mute. Just
mute him, right?
Just mute
Okay.
him.
All right.
So
All right.
guys, 47 wins, 20 losses. We don't count overtime losses in this podcast because they're worthless. Last year's power play rankings, 14th in the league, so not as high as you would have thought for a team with 47 wins. Who's in? Who's out? Well, in is Elias Lindholm, Mark Kastelik, Nikita Zadorov, Jonas Carpusalo, and out Jake DeBrusk, Danton Heinen, James Van Riemsdyk, Pat Maroon, Matt Grieslick, and Linus Allmark. Player tiers. We count player tiers as tier 1 being a 91 point or higher player, and we only have one for Boston, which is David the Pasternak. David Pasternak is indeed the best player on this team. Can you, Junior, see him falling under that 91 points, or what's your prediction for this year?
110 points last season with not a real center, number one center. The year before, 113 points. And both years, I was telling myself, it's the demise of the Bruins. They're going to fall. And then this guy comes out with over 100 points per season. And you would have thought from 2021 to 2022, he went from 77 points in 72 games, so just over a point per game, to 113 points. So you tell yourself, there's no way he could repeat that. Boom. He repeats it with a lower shooting percentage. So, I expect him to get 91 plus points. I have a hard time believing he's going to hit 100, but he keeps proving me wrong. So odds are he's probably going to hit another 100-point season. Hopefully the Elias Lindholm acquisition helps him. But look, Pasternak is one of those guys where there's not much to say other than he's great, and he's going to put up the points regardless of who's around him because he's able to create that offense on his own.
Vince.
Simple as that.
Listen, the Junior hit on the dot there. I feel Elias Lindholm is the best center he'll play with. Besides, he had a few hits with Patrice Bergeron when he was there. But, you can't tell me Zaka and Coyle are better centermen than Elias Lindholm. I understand Lindholm had a bit of an off-season last year with the whole Calgary debacle and then Vancouver. But, when he played with...
We're going to get to Lindholm.
No, but I feel Pasternak, it's a guaranteed 91 plus points, and I think he'll hit the 100 again this year.
Well, he's done it 4 times. If you look at point paces, he's hit over 100 points 4 times in his career, and the player is still only 28 years old. So he's in his stride right now when it comes to his prime. And guys, did you look at the shots on goal the last few years? The last 3 years ago, it was 312. Then the year after that, it was 407. And then last year, it was 382. These are elite shooting numbers. Like, we used to say that 250 is great. This guy's going 300 plus. It's amazing. Pasternak is absolutely a superstar. I don't think that we need to waste any more time on that. You want to add something on Pasta?
78% power play.
78% power play.
Not quite 96 of
not
Ovechkin.
96 like Ovechkin, but still, no.
It's still a lot.
He's their number one sniper, right? We're talking about a sniper, and that's exactly what he does. And he one of the funniest things that I saw this year was when he played in the World Championships after Boston was eliminated, and for the Czech Republic, and he kind of made fun of the NHL for having a 4-nation tournament, but the Czech Republic wasn't in it. But the Czech Republic won the World Championship, so he had a few laughs at the NHL's expense. All right, Tier 2, 80 to 90 points. We don't have anybody necessarily in this tier, and we'll explain why. But 70 to 79 points. This one might be a little bit contested.
Likely.
I will say that there's still one player that could hit that, maybe two.
Okay, so let's start with those players in the next tier.
Okay, so tier 4, 60 to 69 points. We've written here Elias Lindholm, and well, let's start with Elias Lindholm because you had already started mentioning him. So I'll go with you, Vince.
Yeah, I think he's in minimum tier 3, especially if he's going to be playing with Pasternak. We not only have we seen that Pasternak makes his teammates better, but we've also seen Lindholm be able to keep up with superstars like this. So I think tier 3 is a minimum for Elias Lindholm this year. I think he has a chip on the shoulder after last year, where people think that he lost his offensive touch. So I feel, and here he'll get the power play time. He'll be the number one centerman. He'll get the opportunity, and I think he'll take it and run with it. So I think minimum tier 3, and I think he could even be pushed up to a tier 2.
Wow. I just lost complete faith for him on offense in terms of being that player that we thought was once going to be a point per game player. His most consistent lineman with Vancouver was Connor Garland, which is not good, let's be honest, in terms of fantasy relevance. But I will say his first chance was with Pedersen and Höglander, and they couldn't figure that out, which is why he was knocked off that line. And that worries me a little bit. Like, Pedersen doesn't seem to be like a hard player to play with. And the fact that he wasn't able to sustain success with him, it worries me a little bit. Just his trajectory from his last year with Carolina all the way to now with Boston, it seems like it was a bit of a demise. I see him more of 60 to 69. If he has a really good season, I see him like flirting with 70 for sure. But I don't think just by automatically going to play with Pasternak, it makes him a 70 or 80 point per game player.
Well, I'll say that it makes him a 60-point player. Because if you take a look at his past, in Carolina, he never had more than 45 points. And he played with Carolina for 6 seasons. So, or is it 6?
5
seasons. When he went to Calgary, that first year in Calgary, he put up 78 points. Then 54 points, but it was a 60-point pace, 63-point pace. Then the COVID year happened. He put up a 69-point pace. Then he had 82 points, and then Calgary kind of fell off the rails, right? I'm not going to look at Lindholm in Vancouver because to me it's a brand new team he went into. He was kind of being shuffled around, not sure what his role is. Is he a top line center? Is he a third line center? Right? There was a lot going on in Vancouver. So I won't really mention Vancouver, but I still think that he could reach those Calgary numbers. And that's a 65 to maybe 70-point player. And especially the fact that if he's playing with Pasternak, either way, he's the number one center on that team, right? Coyle is not the number one center. Zaka, not the number one center. Lindholm has the capability of doing it. He kind of reminds me of a Bergeron light.
Yeah, not
Bergeron, but Bergeron light. He has that defensive acumen. He plays a two-way game. He's a perfect fit for some of these highly offensive players that he plays with. And that's why I think that he might hit that 65 point.
I think Vince is going to say what I want to say, so I'll let him go.
I'm just going to say Coyle and Zaka both, one hit 60, the other one hit 59 points.
Yeah.
We can all agree that Elias Lindholm is ahead of them talent-wise. So both these players played mostly with Pasternak. So at the end of the day, I truly, truly believe he can go easily in top 70 plus or even hit the 80.
Who wants to walk with Elias?
It's funny because he played with the OG, Elias Instrom.
Oh, wow. 5 with our names today.
Elias Pedersen. No, what I wanted to say is you compared his style to Bergeron. Bergeron's biggest success was with Marchand. So maybe this lifts Marchand more so than Pasternak. Like, I'm not worried so much about Lindholm being successful because he plays with Pasternak. I think, in fact, it might push Marchand a little bit more so. Pasternak, again, doesn't need anybody, right? He produced without Lindholm. So odds are Zaka might still be his center, and then they'll find him a wing, even though Daily Faceoff has Zaka on the left wing with Lindholm and Pasternak.
Well,
I
let's
don't
talk
see that being...
That's a great
right.
transition. Let's talk about Marchand. So we also have Marchand in our tier 4, which is between 60 to 70 points. Go ahead. Continue your thought.
Yeah, Marchand took a bit of a step back last year. I think we weren't used to seeing... we kept thinking, okay, he's going to drop, and he never dropped. And I think finally we saw a little bit more of a drop last year. Not much. He played 82 games, 67 points. And the season prior, he also had 67 points, but on a 73 games played, making it a 75-point pace. So I think he can flirt with 70 points again with Lindholm, maybe 75. But the reality is he is getting older. They do rely on him to play shorthanded. They do rely on him to play on the power play. They do rely on him to put up offense. There's no natural offensive talent on this team other than Marchand and Pasternak. That's a lot of weight to put on them, especially on an aging Marchand. Pasternak can handle it. He's still young. But what I like is that Marchand still doesn't play over 20 minutes. And I think naturally, hopefully it decreases a little bit. And if Lindholm could relieve a bit of that pressure from him, it could do him wonders. But I still see him between 60 and 69. I think that's where he can stay till the end of his career. I don't think he's the type of player that drops drastically to like 40 points.
Vince?
No, I think Marchand could easily hit over 70 points because, like Junior's saying, I think his time on ice, especially short-handed, he'll be playing with someone he's familiar with, which is Elias Lindholm. Which is, like I said, and it's not I don't want Koyo fans and Zaka fans think I don't think they're good players. I just feel Lindholm is 2 steps ahead of them. And bringing in talent to play with talent, I think it's a win for Boston.
Well, I'll tell you guys right now. When I'm looking at this, I agree with Junior. I think that we're talking about a 70 to 75 point player this year, simply because of the fact that he's playing with the best centerman he's played with since Bergeron retired. I think he needs to rely a little bit on that center to take some of that defensive responsibility away from him. Because I feel like last year he was doing everything. He was playing
too much for a 36-year-old. He was playing way too much.
He was the first guy on the back check. He was all in everybody's face on the offense. He's talking to the goalies. He's talking to the refs. Like, he was doing absolutely everything. And at one point, I kind of saw him kind of lose it at one point. Mm-hmm. And I think, like, the coach had to rein him in a little bit, right? We all know that he has a little bit of that fire in him, and he could kind of go crazy at some points. And I just felt it was too much for him. I think Lindholm's going to take that responsibility from him. It's going to make him a better player. It's going to make him a better offensive player. 70 to 75 is my take.
I actually think he's usually very good at timing when to be that jerk, right? And I feel like last year he lost a bit of that timing. I feel like he had maybe so much, he felt the need to like really propel his team that he was doing it like a bit too often and a bit out of context, not at the right times. And maybe with a more sustained attack or a more structured center, it could like alleviate from him, and he could really do it when it's time. You know what I mean?
First year as a captain.
First year as a captain.
So,
yeah,
maybe
that was part of it. Like,
maybe he took too much on his shoulders. So I think this will help.
Well, the other center that he played with was Zaka.
Yeah.
So what do we think about Zaka when it comes to point projections? Because fantasy players are going to want to know, like, this guy who's a center wing eligible, is he worth me having? One thing that I'll mention right off the bat before I leave it off to you guys is that Pavel Zacha, like, is only 27 years old. This guy has been in the league, I feel like, since forever. But he's only 27 years old, 6'4", lefty, plays center, plays left wing. I don't know. What do you guys think about Pavel Zacha's point projection now that he might not even be playing center anymore?
I still think he's going to get top 6 time on ice. Still think he's going to play shorthanded. I don't see him going over 60. I see him maybe over 70. So I maybe see him in the mid 60s. Hitting, if he plays on the wing, maybe a little more because it's less defensive as a winger and you can concentrate more on your offense. But it all depends if he gets that power play one, right? It's going to be between him and Coyle to get that power play one. So I believe he's going to start off with it. But if it doesn't go well, he's going to be the first one to be pulled off of that power play one. And I feel he could easily hit the mid 60s, but I don't see him going further than that.
Jew?
Well, other than his rookie year where he was on pace for 164 points because he had 2 assists in one game. Last year was his career year in terms of points per 82 game pace, which was at 62. 54.8 face-off winning percentage, which is very good for the NHL. I think Elias Lindholm. So what does that mean? It means that any defensive zone face-off, he was being put on the ice. Elias Lindholm now can alleviate from that. So what does that mean? Again, it means that maybe now he could start taking face-offs in the offensive zone. And I think he doesn't lose his spot with Pasternak, whether it's wing or center. So I do think he'll have a bit more of an offensive opportunity. He had 58% of the power play last year, so I do think, like Vince said, he gets the edge over Coyle. So I do see him possibly improving on the 62. I just don't know if he can hit 70 plus. But I do see him between 65 and 69 points. Yeah, for sure.
I actually think you're both being very optimistic. Not that I don't like the player. I like the player, but he's a 60-point player in my book. And if he hits that 60 points, it's going to be good for him. He had 59 points last year. I think that's his most time on ice that he's ever had in his career. And I see that being repeated. 62-point pace, around there. Why do I think that? Is because I feel like he is a defense-first player. He plays defensive, whether he's a winger or a center. His priority is always defensive. And he's not a natural goal scorer or a natural playmaker necessarily. He still plays very good hockey. Guys, Boston fans, don't get me wrong. He's still a good player. I just don't see him as that point-producing player that we want in fantasy. 60 points is not out of the realm of possibility. One person that's not going to give up his power play one time is Charlie McAvoy.
Yeah, he's a wild card. I think he could be. I don't know.
Well, that's a great insight.
He's 26.
This is why you listen.
He's 26 years old. He's going to be hitting his prime. Never got more than 60 points in his career. He hit 56, 52 on pace. In 2022, 2023, he was on pace for more. Last year, 74 games played. I feel with him, it's the same thing as Marshall. Marshall learned how to be a captain and how to lead a team, which was, he took over for Bergeron, which was the captains of captains. I feel McAvoy is still learning how to be a number one defenseman on this team. And I feel last year was a good base for him, and I feel this year could be his breakout year with Boston.
So let's leave it there because you just mentioned number one defenseman. Junior, is McAvoy a number one defenseman in your books?
Not quite. But I do think he has the potential to be one. But he doesn't produce offensively enough. Look, again, I'll come around by saying my standards, but it's got to be at least 60 to 65 points and be an all-around defenseman. So he is that all-around defenseman. He does it all. He kills penalties. He's on the power play. He creates offense. But he's just missing that consistency on offense. I think that can come. But I'll continue with my take on McAvoy for this year. Look, 24 minutes of time on ice. And last year, 86 penalty minutes, career high. I think McAvoy was trying to. I think he was trying to embody that Boston Bruins mentality a little too much. Like losing Bergeron, everyone tried to like step up and be a leader. There was even rumors of possibly McAvoy being the captain at one point. I think he took that a little too much like overboard. I think he has to just take it down a notch and just focus on the basics. And if he could do that, I expect more productivity from him. 314 on the power play, 64% of the 66% of the power play. I expect that to continue. There's nobody else that's going to compete with him for power play time. 41% of shorthanded time. The addition of Zadorov is going to help a lot. So I think if they can reduce that a little bit to maybe 35%, 30%, that'll help much more. But he needs to live right now just until he finds himself on this team 100% is 22-minute mark. And I think Zadorov is going to help reduce that extra 2 minutes maybe he's playing.
So Charlie McAvoy finished 25th or tied for 22nd in points for all defensemen. So if there's 32 teams and we're considering that there's a number one defenseman on all 32 teams, he's within that mold. But what really impresses me on McAvoy is his time on ice. He plays incredible minutes. He plays all situations. He reminds me of a Hedman, a younger Hedman. You're right that he hasn't necessarily hit the Hedman numbers because Hedman last year had 76 points.
But Hedman in his prime did have like in the 60s.
Right.
But it was a different era also.
Right. So we'll see if McAvoy gets there. I think that he's right there, though. Like, he's right in that number one defenseman.
He just needs to produce 60 points consistently as a defenseman, and he'll, like, for me in my books, in my standards, he'll be a number one defenseman. Like, I think he can trend that way. He just needs to maybe dial it back because I think he's trying to do too much.
Do we think what I believe is Zadorov is going to be matched with McAvoy, takes the defensive pressure off of McAvoy, opens up his offensive skills of 5-on-5. Because last year, McAvoy was playing with, most of the time, with Grizzlick. So you got to tell yourself that he was a bit passive offensively because he knew defensively he needed to be there. But now with Zadorov there, you know Zadorov is a hard-nosed defenseman, old school. He ain't passing his own blue line sometimes. So does this give McAvoy the opportunity to really open up his offensive book?
Well, I think he'll be less engaged physically in his own end because he can have Zadorov do that, right? And it'll limit... Look, I mean, it's nice to say you hit, but hitting in the NHL on ice, on skates, it takes energy. So if you're hitting, what was it?
133.
133 hits in a season. It could take a toll.
159, actually, sorry.
159 hits in a season for McAvoy. I think Zadorov could alleviate that pressure he put on himself to be that big bad Bruin. And focus a little bit more on the transition and on offense.
Well, do we have any other power play defensemen on this team other than McAvoy?
0.
Anybody worth it to hold for PP2 as a fantasy ad?
I feel the NHL is going towards a one power play unit team. You know, like the Edmonton Oilers, where they play their stars for 1 minute and 30 seconds, and then, okay, let's put on the rest of the guys just to finish off the last 30 seconds. So I feel teams, when we used to watch hockey before, there was two units always. There was the first unit and the second unit. I feel now teams are just like, hey, we're putting our top guys 1 minute and 30 seconds, and the last 30 seconds, we'll put in the rest.
Okay. Is there anybody that we didn't mention that could possibly flirt with 60-point pace or 60 points? Because technically last year, guys, Charlie Coyle hit 60 points in 82 games, 25 goals, 35 assists. He's not mentioned in our sheet. Do we think he takes a step back now that Lindholm is here?
I think he takes a little bit of a step back for two reasons. Lindholm being one, and also Poitras missed practically the whole season last year. Now, I think Coyle could also play wing. So there's a good chance he might be shifted to wing. I think he's a center left wing because I don't think Poitras is better off playing the wing. I think he's more of a center. So, yeah, that's why I didn't list Coyle, just because there's a bit of a logjam now at center. And I think Poitras is a lost commodity there. Everyone forgets about Poitras because he missed the year, but he
was a rookie too.
He had a good rookie campaign to start. So I wonder where he fits in next year. But, I mean, if Lindholm is one, it's either going to be... Depends what they do with Zaka, right? So it's Lindholm, Zaka, Coyle, and Poitras. But not all four are going to play center.
Yeah, and
probably Coyle gets center number 2 and Poitras center 3.
but I feel Coyle loses the power play time because Lindholm's there now. So he'll hit 60 if he outbattles Zaka for time on ice. Like, I don't see Coyle getting 80 minutes of the ice time this year.
So Brazo was a rookie last year.
Mm-hmm.
He was, I think, on pace for 30 points. He's going to play this year full time. Poitras, you already mentioned, play full time. We don't think any of these guys are going to be necessarily fantasy relevant. Lohre is their top prospect, but he played last year as well as a defenseman. He seems a little bit more of a defensive defenseman, so maybe not point producing that you want in most fantasy leagues. Fabian Lazelle is another one of their top prospects.
Oh, are you going into prospects right away? Go
Yes,
ahead.
I am.
All right, you go, boy.
It's my team. I decided. Fabian Lazelle is maybe going to get a cup of coffee with his team. I don't think he kind of makes it at camp, but you never know. They kind of need that secondary scoring, and Lazelle could kind of produce that secondary scoring on the third line, in my opinion. Dean Latourneau was this year's draftee.
Carry on.
Well, yeah, look it up while I continue here. But a lot of people are really into Gregory Merkulov this year. So that's going to be interesting.
But do you see any of these prospects actually seeing the time on ice in the NHL? Like, Laurie will be a full-timer because last year he was there.
Yeah.
But like you said, Lazelle might get a cup of tea. But the other guys, I feel it's just like develop in the AHL, wait for your time and your spot, and it's going to come.
It all depends. I mean, I'm hearing rumors that Merkulov might be that player that actually makes it. He played 4 games with Boston last year.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have any points, but, I mean, there's a chance that he comes in and actually does something. He had 65 points in Providence in 67 games, right? So he's a point-producing player, and they need help. I'm sorry, they need help. Trent Frederick and Poitras and Brazo are just not a third line that could provide secondary scoring.
Even their second line, like Morgan Geekie. I like Morgan Geekie, but
that's why I think
put up-
Merkulov has a chance here.
okay.
Letourneau was drafted 25th overall by the Boston Bruins. I like Merkulov. Point per game in the AHL. In the last 2 seasons, 21 power play points and 29 power play points. Boston Bruins still had the 14th, I think, what do we say here? The
best power
14th
play.
best power play. I think that could improve if they want to be top contenders in the Atlantic. I wouldn't be surprised if he sneaks in and gets some power play time on that unit.
Another guy that almost had a point per game was Lazelle,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, again, another player that could actually bring a different element to the team. I know the big bad Bruins want to have some physicality on the third and fourth lines. Lazelle's not really a physical player, but still they need that extra little scoring depth, and I feel like these two players have a chance to maybe make it out of camp.
Well,
it should be interesting.
It's nice to have that rugged bottom 6 if you have a solid top 6 that could produce offense. But the reality is they're a bit more dispersed now. They're not as deep on the top 6 as they were before. So you have to inject these Lysells and these Merkulovs somewhere to just try to produce a bit more offense to alleviate off everybody. I think that if Lysell doesn't pan out, Boston's in trouble once Marchand calls it quits because
But there's no reason to think Lysel's not gonna pan out because he's as a youngster he's doing well in the AHL. Like Nick said, I think it's 50 points in 56 games, so it's a good sign. But like we said, AHL and NHL, it's a huge difference. So
okay, you're gonna go talk about the next topic.
you're gonna talk about their biggest problem.
We're gonna talk about the fact that there's not gonna be any more goalie hugs in Boston.
Sad.
It's sad. It's an end of an era
Because
And,
both goalies might not be there at the beginning of the year.
Well, okay, all right, calm down, you. Calm down.
Yeah, you know.
Stop hijacking my take here. Okay,
You go.
No, actually, I really feel that at the end of the day, Linus Allmark was a great, the best pairing that they had in the NHL. You can't ask for better than Swayman and Allmark. Unfortunately, it wasn't feasible to have Allmark and Swayman continue the 50-50. At one point, Swayman wanted to be that number one. And cost-effective reasons, Boston had to move on from Allmark, which they did. We could argue that the return wasn't great, and I think that's what Dom's going to argue at the end of the day. But Swayman is an RFA. He had a .916 save percentage last year, 2.53 goals against average, third overall in the league for goals saved above expected on 5-on-5. We're talking about a number one goalie here. Who did they replace Allmark with? Well, somebody who's nowhere near a number one goalie and probably shouldn't even be in the NHL.
Stop it.
Okay, all right.
Ouch! Ouch!
Yeah, maybe I'm a little bit rough here, but Korpisalo was not a great goalie last year. 890 save percentage, 327 goals above goals.
This is your thing. How are you screwing it up?
No, it's GAA.
Goals against average.
Goals above average?
Against average.
Against average, Jesus. 3.27 goals against average. And 61st in goals save above expected on 5-on-5. So we're big drop off from Allmark, right? Before I go to your crazy take, I want to go to a more sane take here.
There's no crazy take here.
You're muted.
You actually.
Can you tell me what do you think about Swayman for next season, and what is he going to sign at? Because he's still an RFA unsigned.
He's got to make at least $5 million easily if they bridge him. But the reality is, he's probably asking for 6.5 to 7. And what I keep questioning is, you essentially got rid of Allmark for Swayman, Allmark for Lindholm. I personally think they would have been better off keeping the forwards they had and keeping Allmark, because now you're giving someone a full-time position that they've never had. You still expect to contend for a cup, never mind the playoffs. Look, I love Swayman. I think he's a great goalie. Who's his backup? Yeah, I'll tell you who his backup is. He hasn't had a save percentage over 900, except for when he played with LA.
So
in the last 4 years. So he went from 894 with Columbus to 877 with Columbus, 915 when he joined LA, and then 890 last year.
So,
goals against average in the last 4 years, only once was below 3.
So was I totally wrong in saying probably the worst goalie in the NHL right now?
I think, look, I get Boston is a good structured team, but wowzers, like, that's not a guy to back up Swayman after Allmark, you know what I mean?
Okay, I want your salary prediction. You said 7?
I think he's...
Don't ever talk about 5.5 again.
No. So I think I think he's asking for long-term $7 million. I think what happens here is like 2 years at 5.5, because Boston, that's what they need.
Who's their GM? Is it Don Sweeney?
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Don Sweeney, listen to me carefully. Pay the goddamn goalie. Pay him. Everybody's like, oh, but Swayman never played a full season. He's going to crack. He doesn't have playoffs last year. Like, .933 save percentage. Goals against average 2.15. Are you kidding me to tell me that this guy is not a number one goalie and doesn't deserve $8 to $8.5 million? No, I know what you're getting at. But no, stop with the bridge contract. The guy's a number one goalie. You know without him, you're going worse than the Columbus Blue Jackets. Pay the goddamn man. Stop doing your Boston Bruins shit that you always do and try to get people under a certain salary and just pay him. This goal, Swayman is a number one goalie. Swayman, when signed, will be battling for a a Vezina trophy because he is that good. Everybody says it. Boston is where they are because of Swayman. Yes, Allmark was fantastic, and Allmark won the Vezina 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. But Swayman is taking over. He's 25 years old. He's getting into his prime. Just sign him.
Okay, so very passionate, by the way. I really enjoy your
and I'm
passion.
not a Boston fan, but man, it bothers me when you play around with elite players.
Guys, one thing is for sure. The reason Swayman...
Why isn't your headset on?
Because I'm sweaty. One thing is for sure, though. Swayman outplayed Allmark in the playoffs last year. And I think Swayman has proven that he needs the opportunity to be a number one goalie. And if he's looking for an 8-year deal, I think it's going to be $8 million.
100, but don't you give it to him hands down, $8 million, Nick?
For Swayman, I would give it to him $8 million because I'm sorry, there's only 3 stars on your team. There's Marchand. Well, I'm sorry. Okay, well, I have to add McAvoy in there. There's 4 stars on your team. There's Marchand, who's 36 and about to retire, maybe in a couple of years. There's Pasternak, who's really your star. Mm-hmm. There's McAvoy, and there's Swayman. There's nobody else on the team. Everybody else is don't get me wrong. There's always it's a 23 man roster. Okay, I get all that. I'm just saying that this is your star. You have to pay your stars.
To your point, with Allmark there, if Swayman's not there, Boston can survive.
Sorry, if Allmark
is still the backup, without Swayman, Boston could still tread water. They could still survive, right?
Yeah.
Without Allmark, if you lose Pasternak, maybe you survive with Swayman. If you lose Swayman, whether you have Pasternak or not, you're not surviving.
Oh, Korpisalo is not going to.
You're not treading water. You're dying. You're drowning. So to your point, pay the damn guy. The problem is they have $8.5 million left on the cap, with 1 empty roster spot and Swayman to sign, which is why I think it's difficult negotiation because he's probably asking for that $7 to $8 million, and they still have a void to fill. But
if I had a soundbite right now, I'd go back and.
You're the producer. Do it.
I don't have it, but I'd go to Rounders, and I'd be just pay the man. He won fair and square. Just pay the man. Just pay
splash
him.
the pot whenever.
And listen, you need cap space? Well, make a move.
There is another goalie in the system, okay? And we didn't mention him during the prospects. We should have. It's an oversight, I think. But
That's because he's 26 years old.
Brandon Bussi. So Bussi is the next up, and I think he is the one that's going to take over for Korpisalo. Bussi is also a very good goalie prospect and should have an opportunity to be at least a backup in the next few years to Swayman. And I agree with what you guys are saying basically about Swayman. I think it's going to be a long-term deal, and I feel like that long-term deal is going to be pay the man, right? It makes no other sense. No. Guys, any prediction on Boston before I give it up to the next team in the league? Oh, sorry, I should mention final thoughts. Dom's model ranked Boston as 26th in the league, which is below average, in their offseason. Despite the additions of Lindholm and Zadorov, they lost more than they actually gained. and really he's talking about Allmark here, but it wasn't feasible for Allmark to stay, I think. They have the best goalie tandem in the league is no more, and I feel that's where Boston kind of missed out, right? But again, it wasn't really feasible. I think DeBrusk hurts. I think Heinen hurts to some degree. JVR, not really. Matt Grzelcyk, I think his time expired there. Pat Maroon, whatever. Bottom six guys. But I just feel like Boston is not... Might take a small step back. Anyways, final thoughts.
If they start the season with Corpusalo, they're taking a big step back.
I think it's going to...
I think Brandon Bussi, by November, is the backup goalie on this team.
Oh, jeez.
And Ottawa has
Corpusalo
retained
just
$1
better.
million off Corpusalo's salary. Corpusalo has 4 years left at $3 million.
Oh, what a bad trade.
You buy that out, what is it, 1.5 for the next 8 years?
Yeah, but yeah, Corpusalo's gonna stay there as a backup, and he'll be a sustainable backup to Swayman. Swayman's gonna get 60 games. Corpusalo will get 22 games.
You're saying basically that Corpusalo didn't have anything in Ottawa defensively, and that's why he's going to be better.
but why did he get that big contract with Ottawa? Because he did well in LA.
For half a season.
But he did well. He made it to playoffs. He brought them into a playoff run. So
I think that's more LA than Corpusalo.
But
he went hot.
I understand. But isn't Boston better than Ottawa as a team?
Are they better than LA?
Defensively, I put them side by side.
The structure helps goalies for sure.
You know,
But his goals saved above expected was pretty bad.
I don't think he's gonna be like Corpusalo. I think he's gonna be a very good backup to Swayman whenever he needs a day off. He'll take over. Boston will make the playoffs because every goddamn year we say Boston is gonna go on downfall, and they finish like second or first in the division. So they're making the playoffs. It's as long as they sign Swayman. If you don't pay the man, then too bad.